His Excellency the Minister of State of Ireland, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Manuel José Gonçalves, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of Mozambique.
Mr. President of the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished heads of delegations, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great honor that I address this august assembly and convey to your excellencies and all participants in this session a special greeting from His Excellency Felipe Jacinto Nyusi, President of the Republic of Mozambique. We congratulate His Excellency Philemon Yang on his election as President of this session and wish him success in fulfilling his mandate. Our greetings are extended to the other members of the Bureau. We assure you of our full support in carrying out your duties. We also commend the positive work carried out by your predecessor, His Excellency Ambassador Dennis Francis, which contributed to the strengthening of our organization towards a greater approach to the peace and development agenda. We extend a word of great appreciation to the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, for his tireless dedication and advocacy in promoting multilateralism for global peace and security. Mr. President, the current session of the General Assembly constitutes a sovereign opportunity to reinforce multilateralism, our collective action to consolidate international peace and security and global security for the well-being of humanity. These renewed commitments are reinforced through the deliberations of the Summit of the Future and other important high-level events recently held. We therefore welcome the theme of our general debate, which has particular importance due to its connection with the future, which requires urgency in strengthening international cooperation so that together we can face the challenges faced by humanity today to build a prosperous present and a promising future for humanity. We are aware that in just 6 years, the 2030 agenda will expire and the progress made on its implementation is still tenuous. It is urgent to mobilize the necessary resources for its financing as well as for other internationally agreed development objectives in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Therefore, we encourage all member states to accelerate the materialization of the commitments made, including the reinforcement of mutually beneficial cooperation to respond to prevailing challenges, including the fight against poverty, conflicts, terrorism, and climate change. Mr. President, Excellencies, we express our optimism about our collective future where an environment of peace and security reigns, The functioning of our global institutions must keep up with the current dynamics that are imposed upon us. Thus, we align ourselves with the voices that defend the urgency of the reform of the United Nations, especially at the level of the Security Council, for greater inclusion, particularly giving a permanent voice to the African continent, thereby correcting the historical injustice to which it has been subjected. We are encouraged by the continued collaboration between the United Nations and the African Union to overcome conflicts within the context of maintaining a peace, international peace and security. Resolution 2719, adopted by the United Nations Security Council on 21 December 2023, is a significant milestone for African Union-led peace support operations. It strengthens collaboration between the United Nations and the African Union, promoting greater regional and national ownership of peace initiatives. We hope that it will effectively ensure access to adequate, predictable, and sustainable financing required for the operations of the African Union. We believe that this collaboration will contribute to giving greater strength to efforts to prevent and resolve conflicts towards a prosperous and peaceful Africa, the Africa we want, as established in Agenda 2063 of the African Union. Mr. President, Excellencies, the concert between nations has been feasible throughout these times due to the collective observance of the sacrosanct objectives and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, including the defense of the right to self-determination of peoples, respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. It is deeply concerning the escalation of conflicts and tensions in various parts of the world. In Ukraine, unfortunately, there is still no encouraging signs for an end to the conflict. We believe that the safest path is dialogue between the parties. It is up to all of us, as members of the United Nations, to persuade the parties to the conflict to end hostilities and opt for a dialogue towards peace between these two countries. In the Middle East, in violations of the principles of international law and international humanitarian law, the conflict continues to take human lives among the civilian population, particularly children, women, and the elderly, as well as destroying civilian infrastructure, causing the tragedy that we unfortunately witness. We call for the cessation of hostilities and the protection of innocent civilians from the conflict. The vision of the existence of two sovereign states, Israel and Palestine, as full members of the United Nations, is the fairest formula that will ensure sustainable peace and stability in this region. In Africa, we are also concerned about the conflict in Sudan, which has killed thousands of innocent civilians, including refugees, causing an unprecedented humanitarian disaster. We reiterate our calls to the parties to the conflict to end hostilities and the need for dialogue in order to restore peace and stability. Mr. President, the use of sanctions and other unilateral coercive measures does not contribute to the preservation of peace, security, and sustainable economic and social development. Unilateralism is contrary to the multilateralism enshrined in the Charter. In this context, we reiterate our firm call for the total lifting of unilateral coercive measures imposed on Zimbabwe and Cuba, as they have significant negative impacts on the populations of these countries, harming their rights and well-being, so as to allow for more fair and equitable development. Mr. President, Excellencies, in January 2023, Mozambique assumed the biannual 2023-2024 term as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. With 3 months remaining until its end, we would like to reiterate the honor and privilege we have had in serving in that United Nations body responsible for maintaining international peace and security. In the last 2 years, Mozambique has made its direct contribution to peace and security in the world, collaborating in addressing all topics on the Security Council's agenda, amongst which we would like to highlight peace and security in Africa, combating terrorism, women, peace and security, and the nexus between climate, peace, and security. We presided over the body in March 2023 and in May 2024. We are leading the ad hoc working group for preventing and resolution of conflicts in Africa. We will soon end our mandate. We reaffirm our commitment to continue collaborating with a view to pursuing the goals that guide the United Nations Security Council to strengthen international peace and security. We therefore thank all member states for the support provided to Mozambique during its mandate and reaffirm our commitment to multilateralism and the principles and objectives set out in the United Nations Charter, which have guided our mandate since the beginning. Mr. President, Excellencies, in Mozambique, we continue to consolidate our young democracy and citizenship, strengthening dialogue and seeking consensus in the various fora of participatory representation. In this spirit, the 7th presidential and legislative elections and for the provincial assemblies will take place on the 9th of October. In the fight against terrorism in the province of Cabo Delgado, our vigorous action against this phenomenon has resulted in progress with the support of SADC and Rwanda and international cooperation partners, despite the prevailing challenges. In this regard, we would like to reiterate our appreciation and gratitude to all bilateral and multilateral partners who have spared no effort in supporting us in the fight against terrorism and for the restoration of peace and tranquility to the victim populations and for the reconstruction of economic and social infrastructures in areas affected by terrorist actions. Furthermore, our country has faced multiple and complex challenges that include exposure to risks associated with climate change, such as cyclical cyclones, droughts, and floods. These phenomena cause, on average, economic losses of around 1.1% of GDP per year. Mr. President, Excellencies, finally, we reiterate the commitment of the government of the Republic of Mozambique to international peace and security which are essential factors for the well-being of humanity and a prosperous world. I thank you very much.
Muchas gracias al viceministro.
I thank the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of Mozambique. And I now give the floor